Welcome to Veterans Connected, where maintenance and reliability expert and military veteran Eric Bevavino connects with fellow veterans in industry during each episode, where they exchange their experiences and discuss the transition from the military to industry and the paths and resources that led them to where they are today. The Veterans Connected podcast is proudly produced by the industry's leading network and learning community, Mobius Connect. Eric, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Bevavino, host of the Mobius Connect podcast, focused on connecting military veterans to the maintenance and reliability community. Our aim here is to bridge the understanding gap between the military and civilian worlds, thereby improving the veteran transition journey and ultimately providing hope and a helping hand to any of our brothers and sisters out there struggling to find their way. We'll do this by interviewing veterans who have successfully made it through. For this session, we've chosen to interview one such Army veteran, Mr. Michael Perkins, whose fascinating and patriotic story is a must listen for anyone interested in joining us on this mission. Welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you. I just got in from Texas, so I'm doing all right.
So you're in Florida, as I understand it. Is that correct?
I'm in Florida. That's where I live now, yes.
All right. Fantastic. And traveling for work or business?
Work.
Work.
Consultant now, so I travel weekly.
Work, right? Out on Monday, back on Friday, that type of thing?
That's it. Yep.
Well, fantastic. That's probably a pretty good place to start then. Like, what are you doing today? What's your job and your role in this world? And, describe that a little bit to us, please.
So I'm a senior reliability professional currently. The clients I've been working with lately are in the oil and gas industry, although I've worked in just about every industry that you can imagine. But I've been focused probably in the last 4 or 5 years, mostly on electrical reliability. So working with clients to define what their master equipment list is, do criticality studies, rank the equipment, and then start from, the most critical to the least critical, developing equipment maintenance plans, creating job plans, and really setting up their condition-based monitoring programs.
That sounds fascinating. It sounds like soup to nuts, really, in the reliability program, or at least the foundational pieces to really get folks going, which I found fascinating when I joined the reliability space. And it's going back a ways, though I've been in lubricants for most of my career, lubricants as far as they relate to reliability, a little bit of time with maintenance and reliability consulting company, but just to understand that many folks out there don't have the basics, or if they do, they're all mixed up and blended from years past. So do you like, what do you like best out of that job?
One, I like spending time with the technicians on the floor. Prior to this job, I worked at basically the C-suite level folks, making pitches to them and developing asset strategies and stuff. But, kind of lost touch with the guys on the floor. And that's really where my heart is the actual guys that are, in there in the mix, turning the wrenches and getting it done. So that's where I like to play. That's my space.
Nice. Well, I can definitely see the non-commissioned NCO senior. What did you retire from the military as in the Army?
First class. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's even though I wasn't cool enough to be an NCO in the military, I enjoyed working with the guys every day too. And really, that's where the rubber hits the road, right?
Yeah.
And having been both in the boardroom and on the shop floor, I think it's more fun to be there too.
Yep, definitely,
for sure. Well, good. Well, why don't we dial it back a little bit? The early days, where are you from? What sort of influences sort of got you into the military? And then we'll talk about your career a little bit there, and then the transition to the civilian world. But let's start with the early days.
Well, I was an Army brat. My father was in, career guy. I was actually born while he was stationed in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. But he came back. We lived at Fort Stewart, Georgia, Kaiserslautern, Germany, and then Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where he pretty much spent about 20 years of his career at Fort Campbell with, a couple hiatuses in Korea. But my family had a farm in Mississippi, so I spent, basically my youth, especially my summers, working on the farm in Mississippi, and that's really where I first got my taste into doing maintenance, because the philosophy was basically, if you break it, you fix it, and boy, did I fix a lot of things. So,
ran it into the dirt and had to fix it. So
that's right.
That's pretty cool. I don't think I've heard if you break it, you fix it. I think I've heard don't fix it till it breaks, or fix it when it breaks. That type of stuff. So this was accountability from an early age on maintenance and reliability. Okay, and what kind of farm was it?
So it was a cotton farm originally. Then the bottom kind of dropped out of cotton in the late 70s and kind of migrated over to cattle after that. But we still, grew some corn and had some large gardens, and we put up a lot of hay. So I spent a lot of time in the summer throwing hay bales around. So that was no fun at all.
Not the coolest temperature climate to be in for doing that either, right?
No, and basically, up before the sun came up, and you finished work after the sun went down, because basically you got up in the morning, you got everything ready to go out in the field. You worked all day in the field. You come in for lunch, and then you go back out, and then when you got back in, you had to maintain the equipment and get it ready for the next day. So a lot of wrench turning, because we had tractors that were model years from the 30s all the way up to the 70s. So a lot of wrench turning going on there.
Yeah, and a lot of looking at a part and saying, I think this will work.
Yeah, and looking at, they don't make this part anymore, but what is similar to that I can make it work?
Well, that sounds like great experience, not only for your time in the military, but then your time after the military, that hands-on experience, especially in the work ethic too, right?
And it kind of followed on. I mean, in high school, I took small engine repair, and then the next year I was a teacher's aide for small engine repair. And then I got into building and trades, where I actually got to be involved in building 2 houses from ground up. So that was interesting. And I was a teacher's aide for that. My father ended up buying a small engine repair shop, so I worked in the shop with him. That was quite the experience. And believe me, working for my father was like being in the military. Right. And it wasn't till I joined the military that I developed the appreciation for how well he was able to berate someone. I've seen him make grown men cry
in a very efficient manner.
In a very efficient manner. So when I got to basic training, it was all a joke to me. I'm sitting there thinking, you're an amateur. Can't you do a little better than that?
Did he do any time as a drill sergeant?
No, he did not, but he was an infantry guy. So.
I gotcha. And Vietnam vet to boot, right? Yeah. Okay, infantry, special forces as well, or
no, he was leg infantry, so he walked everywhere he went.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. And coming back from Vietnam, I suspect he either did or didn't have a lot of stories that he related to you. Perhaps lost a lot of friends over there as well. So, wow, very interesting background, and certainly that would help forge you to be the man you are today, without a doubt. So, fantastic. Okay, well, that's where it started. So, your main influence, I guess, to join the military was your dad, but it seems like you were on the path for skilled trades at that time.
I was, but I also was in junior ROTC in high school, and I was part of the Ranger platoon. I was on the marksmanship team. I was paramilitary basically before that, because I was Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts. I was a patrol leader when I was like 11, senior patrol leader or assistant senior patrol leader when I was like 12 or 13, and senior patrol leader by the time I was 14. Went to Brown C +2 leadership camp. So a lot of things building up to those leadership foundations and those disciplines.
Early in your life too, which was so important. I mean, these are experiences that some people never get. in their entire lives. So, okay, well, fantastic. So you're kind of in that mode with an angle towards mechanical or electrical repair, that type of thing. And then what was the moment that inspired you to hit the recruiter and go sign up?
If they would have let me go to the recruiter when I was 5, I would have gone when I was 5.
You were ready.
My father was career military. My grandfather was military. My uncles were military. So everybody around me was military, and we had Marine Corps, Navy, and Army. No Air Force guys in the mix, but so I was immersed in it. So
that's why you don't like to go to the C-suite anymore, because the Air Force is kind of the corporate.
Civilians in uniform.
Right on.
I like to give them a hard time because they have it so nice.
Well, there are a lot of Air Force veterans out there too, right? In maintenance and reliability, I mean, especially in the aircraft maintenance for sure. But well, good. So you were surrounded by positive military influences.
Definitely.
Growing up, and okay, well, cool. And then so where'd you go from there?
Well, I knew I couldn't be a pilot because I wore glasses, so I thought, well, I'll get into aviation maintenance. So unfortunately, when I got to the MEP Center, I found out I was colorblind, so that threw that out of the mix.
Okay, wow.
So I was kind of deflated, and but I knew I was going in one way or the other. So they talked me into going in as a behavioral science specialist, working with the shrinks. It's like, well, okay. And I took some college classes at night before I went active, in psychology and sociology. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of interesting. When I went in and finally got to AIT, I found out I absolutely hated it with a passion. I was not prepared for it. Didn't know the world was as wicked as it is. So,
okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, okay, so were they grooming you for special forces at that point?
No,
or was it just here we think you're this?
Well, they you scored high on your test, and we have a hard time getting people into this position because you have to score so high. So let's try you here.
Okay. And you got there, and it wasn't really.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
I struggled. I found my study habits were not that great, especially being 17 and being on a military installation and allowed to drink. So that was not a good mix.
Yeah.
So after I bombed a test horribly, I actually went to the instructions and said, "Look, I just don't think this is for me. I need to do something else." So they said, "Well, there's a slot opening up. You can go to truck driver school." I was like, okay, sure. Went to Fort Leonard Wood, froze my butt off, never saw green grass. It was all snow all the time. Got to drive semi trucks, on the ice and watch them slide around. And got sent to my first duty station, which was Fort Lee, Virginia. And instead of driving a truck, they sent me to the post headquarters, where I worked in the protocol office as a staff driver, and then ultimately became the post command sergeant major's driver, and then the post commander's driver. So,
and that gave you some exposure to higher authority leadership.
Yeah, I was around a lot of brass.
Yeah, both in NCO and the officer community. So, I'm guessing this story sort of takes a turn when somebody from that crew notices you and says, "Hey, maybe you ought to try this." Is somebody?
Well,
is that
funny because I said the whole time, even back then, right when I started, I was like, "I'm gonna try out for special forces. I think I can do that." And my squad leader at the time said, "You're never gonna make special forces. You just might as well give it up." I won't jump too far ahead, but he ate those words. I got to see him again later.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I ran into him later after I had earned my tab, and he recognized me, and he remembered the conversation we had. So that was great.
Did he congratulate you as well?
Yes, he did. Yeah. So that kind of made me feel real good. But after being a driver, I thought this is not for me either. So I re-upped for the infantry, re-upped with the airborne option, went to Fort Benning, did my training. Thought I was going to Vicenza, Italy, and 3 days before I was supposed to ship out, they sent me to Korea. But on the bright side, it was 1988, and I got to see the Olympics in Korea.
Nice.
So, but that's really where my leadership roles kicked off in the military.
Okay.
So, I was a young E4 promotable. I got into a line company, and I guess I impressed somebody, and they made me a fire team leader. Then shortly after that, they were short on NCOs, and I became a squad leader. I was still an E4 promotable. So they walked in one day and said, being a specialist, boss around specialist isn't going to work very well. Here's corporal stripes. Why don't you put those on? So, I held an E6 slot as a corporal, as an E4.
Nice.
And I, got to leave there, went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, same place I grew up, lived in the house I grew up in. And I was fortunate enough to get placed in the recon scout platoon as a sniper team leader.
Nice.
Then I went to a line company as a squad leader. And that's when I, said, I think it's that time. I put in my paperwork to go to selection for Special Forces. Made it through, ended up being one of 116 out of over 500 in the class that, I tried, for tryouts and made it through. And so that was a great experience. That's one that I'll never forget. And the great thing about it is I had a lot of leadership time under my belt. And part of the selection is they have events where you're picked as a leader, and they want to know how well you can lead, but they also want to know how well can you follow. So when it's your time to lead, lead. When it's your time to follow, follow. So you're graded both ways. And fortunately, like I said, I'd spent a lot of time in the infantry then, and I'd been around men and knew how to motivate men, because sometimes what we do is not very pleasant, not very enjoyable. So you have to be able to influence people,
Well, without a doubt, and it's not just, thou shalt, or, this is a direct order type of thing, like you see on the movies, right? This is a command, right?
Yeah. I fall back to the military definition of leadership, the ability to influence one in such a way as to achieve a desired goal or effect.
Nice. By rote. Very, very, very well done.
Yeah.
I love it. And this theme of great leaders being great followers is really been kind of consistent in the podcast, as well as some of the really, really great books out there. And I'm not sure that that's very well understood.
Yeah.
And in the general civilian population, I think some folks are fighting for airtime all the time because they feel like, they have to be heard in order to be promoted or whatever, to be at the certain rung of the ladder. And oftentimes it's the folks that are the most quiet that are the ones that you want to listen to or try to pull information out of, right? Because they're the ones that have the most wisdom or insight. But
I've often been referred to as E.F. Hutton. I don't speak often, but when I speak, people listen. Yeah.
People come up to you and say, I notice that you don't talk very much in these meetings, but when you do say something, it's usually pretty damn important, right? Yeah. So just out of curiosity, what's your longest shot? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but I'm a little bit of a rifle guy myself.
Well, I can say my longest iron sight shot was actually 800 meters. My
Impressive.
longest scoped shot with a 50 cal was right at about 1,600 meters.
Beautiful. That's a long way off.
That's a long way off.
That's a long way off. About 16 football fields. I'm not doing the math in my head, but it's somewhere around a mile, isn't it?
That's when they drop before they ever hear the round coming.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Well, I hope you put some bad guys where they're supposed to be, and we certainly appreciate that. That is that's what it means, right? That's what we're here for. All right. Well, Mike, where are we at now? So you graduated 116 out of 500, one of the best experiences of your life, and
got selected for to be a weapons NCO. Got selected for Arabic language. You don't get to pick what you're going to be, and you don't get to pick what language you're going to speak, but you're going to speak a language, and you're going to go to a group. So again, kind of following along with my history. During training, during the field phase at the end, you kind of break into a mock Special Forces A detachment. And I got selected to be the acting team sergeant. So basically the senior NCO on the team. And I helped a lot of guys that were not strong in their field craft. They didn't come from, a combat arms background. So I was able to help them through on some of their patrols and get them to pass their patrols. So that was really nice. And I guess, the crown and glory out of that is I got submitted for a Distinguished Honor Grad for my class.
Nice.
So,
it's not something that everybody can say, for sure. Yeah, without a doubt. Well, congratulations on that. That's quite an accomplishment. And then, so this was all in training mode, right? And then they send you out into the wild at that point. Yeah. When
I reported to my company, they told me, well, this is your team. Your team room's right across the hallway there. And oh, by the way, you're the junior weapons guy. Go in there and tell the senior weapons guy he no longer has a job in there to get out.
Wow. Okay, that's not intimidating, right?
No, not at all. But I got, like I said, I was a junior weapons guy, but that really doesn't mean anything in Special Forces. Everybody's an expert in their field. So if you're doing something and that's, your field of expertise, you're leading what you're doing, whether that was in training or whether it was on deployments, so basically I'm the weapons and tactics person. So we switched over to be a hostage rescue team. So being a weapons guy, I ran all the ranges and was responsible for the ranges, made sure everybody was safe, and basically led the instruction. But I was fortunate enough to be on a hostage rescue team. I was on a dive team.
Nice.
I was on a strategic intelligence, unit. So I deployed to a lot of places, got to do a lot of things. Probably some of the highlights there were I spent 6 months in Saudi Arabia teaching the personal bodyguards for the Crown Prince, weapons and tactics. So I worked with his close inner ring security, the guys that are dressed like him and got sidearms tucked under their robes there. So, which was kind of funny. When I got there, they all had these big shoulder holsters with 6-inch, 357 Magnum pistols, revolvers. And I'm like, you got anything else in the armory besides those?
Oh, your dirty, hairy weapons, right?
So that's really not going to fly here. And the other great thing was they gave me an interpreter. And I was like, well, okay, I'll roll with it. So I kept the interpreter for a couple of days, and then I set the interpreter away on the third day. And I'd never spoke any Arabic to them, but I just listened to them. And so on the third day, when I sent the interpreter away and I started speaking Arabic, it took a few minutes, and then it started registering all the things they'd been saying about me in front of me.
Were they careful about it, or would they say anything?
No, they were not. Let's just say 2 days later, 2 majors that were part of the detachment were no longer part of that detachment.
Interesting.
The great thing was, I actually, before I started, I sat down with the Crown Prince and had a one-on-one, and he basically told me, these are guys that are protecting my life, and you're the guy teaching those guys. And if there's somebody that doesn't need to be there, you let me know, and they'll be gone. And he held to his word.
Interesting. How interesting. Wow, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah. And in other cultures, probably got exposed to other, additional cultures too, but just so different from ours. And then like a stratosphere, like more money than anybody in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Right. These guys, which, money can't buy you love or safety. I mean, it can buy you help. Right.
Yeah.
But that type of thing. Well, very, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
There's
cool.
a lot of things money can't buy. I was teaching sniper training in Kuwait, and these guys had the best rifles, the best scopes. And it was funny. You sit down with them, and they'd start zeroing in. And if they wasn't hitting the target or couldn't hold a tight shot group, it's like, this one's bad. I'm gonna get another one. It's like, it's not
the gun. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, yeah. Well, so you did where'd you do your dive training? Just out of curiosity, because I did dive training in the Navy.
Key West. So
in Key West. Okay, yeah.
Has their own in Key West. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen that. I didn't do any training there, but we had some reserve duty, some nice reserve duty in Key West as the dive unit. We were doing some hull inspection for the Coast Guard and some other stuff in addition to goofing off. But yeah, that's a nice facility down there. Gotcha.
And then probably my best, fondest memory is Kobar Towers. It got bombed, killed some Air Force guys. I was already in country, and I was actually the only Special Forces asset in country at the time. And I got flipped over into doing covert counter surveillance and working basically for the embassy and probably another organization that is in the shadows of the government. My actual job title was legal spy in country. So how cool of a title is that, right?
That is cool. Yeah. Yeah. And it's actually saying what you're doing too. It doesn't really hide that.
So I got to run around, civilian clothes, didn't cut my hair, didn't shave, drove a different car probably about every day, following around people that we thought were following around our people, and building connections, buddying up with members of the royal family and hanging out with them, collecting a little information on them, because you never know when you might want to exploit what information you have on them one day, so that was a really cool job.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the world's very political, no matter how much we want to deny it or whatever. But yeah, somebody's got something on somebody. Well, that's cool. So they tapped you on the shoulder, and you had to tell the Crown Prince, "Hey, man, I got to go. My nation needs me, and this is happening." He's like, "Yeah, whatever." Yeah.
Along the maintenance front, there, we maintained our own vehicles. We maintained our own weapon systems. Some of our specialty stuff, especially on the dive team, had to maintain all that. So, it's constantly working in maintenance. That's where I really learned that things need to be done the right way. Because it's got to work when you need it to work. Sometimes your life depends on it. So maintenance was very important. Being able to read manuals, follow procedures, be very technically proficient was very important. So that really kind of set the foundation as well for my future career.
Well, it's so cool to hear you say that, right? Because we have high-speed operators like yourself on the podcast, and even though they might think of themselves as high-speed operators like Navy nukes, right? Which is a different kind of high-speed operator, which follows a different sort of protocol, a different environment, but same fundamental maintenance practices, right? Doing the right things the right way every time. So when you need that gear, it's up and running, ready to go, whether you're making a 1,600-meter shot, sniper shot, or you're trying to get your submarine underway to follow Red October or whatever, that type of thing. So that's very interesting. So your maintenance was on, so you did some of the dive gear. That's where I got an appreciation for it. I mean, it's life-saving equipment. I mean, I suspect in Special Forces, most of the stuff you have could save your life. You want to travel light, and you only want to take what you need.
And you're working in a harsh environment behind enemy lines. There's no sending it in or getting another one shipped out to you. You've got to fight with what you've got.
No Amazon.
No Amazon out there.
No Amazon of the Army coming to,
Yeah.
drone in a special part.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
good. Okay. Well, that's great. So, anything that we didn't hit on the military experience side that you wanted to make sure to mention before we transition to your civilian
I,
experience?
I think that's pretty much the highlights. I don't want to tell a bunch of war stories or anything, but
Well,
I had a great career. I loved it. I would have continued on further. Unfortunately, I had one bad jump that kind of wrecked part of my body, and I could no longer physically do it. And I let's just say you're a gunslinger or you're not, and nobody wants to not be a gunslinger. So.
Well, without a doubt, and that's really interesting. I didn't have to jump out of airplanes, and it's not meant to be a direct comparison, but I have 2 titanium hips now.
Yeah.
in my mid 50s. I mean, it's you carry it, but it was for me, it was probably just like having scuba tanks or carrying a bunch of stuff on my back all the time. I mean, for you jumping out of airplanes, I've heard that so frequently, the injuries associated with parachuting, long-term sort of type of stuff. But
the whole thing kind of beats you down. I thought I was a pack mule when I was younger. I prided myself on I could throw 30, 40 pounds more on my back than most of the other guys, and walk further and go faster. And I thought I was indestructible. I know better today.
After some of those irreplaceable parts wear out,
more than one joint has been replaced more than one time.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear about the accident, but I'm glad to hear about the success of your career, and certainly to have you with us here today to tell about it. And so you had a lot of leadership experience growing up, took you into the Army, had great experiences in the Army. I'm sure there were some not so great experiences, but we tend to forget about most of those unless they're good stories over a beer or
it's like when you're sitting in the foxhole and it's pouring down rain and you're in mud up to your knees. You just kind of look around and say, I really wish it would suck some more here.
Yeah. Trying to teach my kids the embrace the suck mentality. Like, there are going to be some things in life that you don't want to do, but you got to see the bigger objective. And you can't just say, I'm done, I'm out, this is not for me. You gotta go with the flow. And it's nowhere near what you experienced, for sure.
I suffered through trench foot that wreaked havoc on my feet for years. During Desert Storm, I was out so long, so often that I actually had uniforms rotting off my body. And it'd be funny because I'd come in after being out for 45 days and for a shower, and somebody's like, man, you stink. I'm like, yeah, I have a real job in this war. I don't get to take a shower every day.
Yeah. I mean, and you guys, I mean, are by design supposed to be able to handle everything on your own, be out there on your own, evade and keep track of what's going on with the bad guys, for sure. So good. So Mike, when you decided or it was decided for you determined
for me,
that this transition was going to take place. How did that look? I mean, what did you do in preparation for it? How did that go?
Well, it came about, really rather sudden. Everything just kind of started rapidly falling into place, and really before I knew it, I was about to become a civilian, about to not have a job really lined up for the first time in my life, and went to a military job fair and listened to a guy talk about an opportunity in hazmat, and so I took the HazWOPER training and got certified, and ended up going to a hazardous waste remediation company, basically. Where my first day on the job, I was handed a duffel bag of equipment, a big envelope for cash, and the keys to an old beat up van, and told, head to Toledo. There's a group there already working on a train derailment. You're going to be cleaning out sulfuric acid in some rail cars. The money is to pay the guys that are there. And got there.
We sounds like a special forces mission of a different.
It does, yeah. Here I am. They don't even know me. They're handing me big bags of cash and stuff and telling me head forth and do great things. And I show up there and we're working 12-hour shifts round the clock, and we're hot bunking in the beds because they're too cheap for everybody to have their own hotel room. So you're rolling into the bunk that somebody just rolled out of, which you probably know well in the Navy.
Well, that's better than being 45 days in the desert, I guess. It can always be worse.
Oh yeah, but they actually seek out military guys because basically the job is so hard and then so demanding that most guys don't last very long, and they find that military guys will get in there and get the job done. Even if they don't like it, they'll get the job done. Where most civilians off the street or fresh out of school, they last about a day or two and they're like, yeah, I'm not doing this.
It's probably even worse today, right? When so many more people don't even want to show up. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that's interesting.
But I knew that was not my calling. So
that's a great story.
But to me, I'd rather have any job than no job. So I took a job, knowing that once I had a job, I could look for something that interested me more. So
survival, right? Get a paycheck going, getting something steady going, right? So I'm curious how that ended up with the bag of money and the sulfuric acid. I mean, it was successful, and it
was successful.
Yeah.
Got people paid, and we cleaned out the rail cars, and the railroad got back up and running, and did a lot of other stuff. I did a Superfund site where they were cleaning up, where a refinery had basically completely saturated some wetlands, about 10 acres worth. And we actually went in there and dug down 10 feet deep in the whole 10 acres and got sent out to be incinerated and go to a special landfill. And I got to drive all kinds of construction equipment. So,
fun.
Yeah, there's fun things to do everywhere.
Move a lot of contaminated sludge around.
Yeah, and the funny part was it was a Superfund site, so they had a military person, in there. They had a Coast Guard E4 that was in charge of us.
Oh, nice.
It's like, okay.
Right. Yeah. That's funny. Okay, so you had a couple. Well, this is the same job in the remediation, right? So how did you get into maintenance reliability? I see in your LinkedIn profile you have a lot of maintenance and reliability experience too. Yeah.
So I saw an ad in the paper for a motor manufacturer and repair facility, and they were looking for somebody that could run their dyno stand where they test the motors. I thought, kind of sounds interesting, a little technical. I got to play with some stuff, lots of big equipment there. It's like kid in a candy store. Look at all these great tools. So I went there and they showed me around, and at the end of it, they thanked me and said, well, we think you have too much experience and we don't think you'll stay here. So unfortunately, we're not going to offer you the job. I was crushed. I was so looking forward to working there, and
wow. Okay. Yeah.
And again, one of those things.
Overqualified. They were afraid of the future, right? And they didn't have to be. Okay.
Because it was kind of not a real technical job, but so I ended up taking a job as a fast food restaurant general manager in a very wealthy town where the only kids around there to work were wealthy kids that didn't want to work, but they were only there because they got a bad grade and mommy and daddy made them. So it was not a great work environment. Matter of fact, I went into the restaurant 2 days before I took over as a loaner employee from another restaurant, supposedly, boss undercover kind of thing.
Yeah.
See how they operate. And then I walked in a couple of days later and fired half of them.
Wow. So I'm curious, you don't have to say the town, but what state was that in? Was that back here in
Indiana?
Kentucky? Indiana. Okay. So not too far away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So another twist before reliability, maintenance and
Yeah,
reliability
another
went to the,
twist.
the fast food industry, more leadership experience, right?
Yeah,
Leadership and
more leadership.
management.
Yeah.
So when did the bright light go on, or who did you meet to pull you into the orbit
Well, about
of?
2 months later, that same company called me up and said, "We don't want you for the dyno job, but we want to get you in and start working with our repair guys on the motors, working on the field service teams, pulling motors, repairing them, putting them back in." Because at that time I had gotten a degree, basically in engineering, so they didn't want to turn me loose as an engineer because I really never worked around an electric motor.
Hmm.
So I spent a year on their road crew, which is the best experience I ever could have had. And I'm very thankful that they did that before they put me in an engineering role, because it really prepared me. One, I knew what the guys had to go through. I knew what it took to do the job. I knew how to, scope the jobs. I really learned a lot. And when my year was up, they moved me over into the predictive maintenance department. And that's where, I was exposed to all these predictive maintenance technologies,
Nice,
infrared
nice.
thermography, vibration analysis, ultrasonics, motor current signature analysis, and I couldn't get enough of it. I studied everything I could study. I went to every class I could go to. I started picking up certifications. I just got in with the Society for Maintenance and Reliability Professionals, and I found, this is my niche. I love this.
Nice, nice. Well, that, knowing your backstory now kind of marries up all the farm work and then the military activity that you had going on. It kind of comes together in kind of a new way, right? And do you get electrical engineering degree
Yes.
or
Yeah.
okay? So
So, that was great. Um, the fun thing was I got to learn all this knowledge, but I got to use it. So I went out on calls. I did warranty claims at first to see, why it broke. And most times it's because they broke it, not because it was
over
a
greasing,
manufacturing
yeah, yeah,
problem.
yeah.
But then the department started growing. We started adding new technologies. And so we started doing predictive maintenance for a lot of our clients. And then before long, you're getting a call from a client and say, "Hey, we need you to come right away. We've been down for a couple hours. We can't figure out what it is. We need your help." And you arrive on site and, you're like Superman. Here I am to save the day. And,
With all your tools, right?
yeah, I've got a
Yeah.
van load of electronics and stuff,
Ghostbusters. Yeah.
yeah. So I started pulling stuff out and, 5 minutes later, like, "Well, what is it?" I'm like, "You've had days to work on this. Give me a little more than 5 minutes."
Right. Let me tie my shoes here before I go
Yeah.
into the building. Yeah.
But, it really didn't take very long that you start to identify, some trends. And I got to see so many different failure modes in so many different industries that I got to where I could show up and I, pretty quickly knew about what it was. And it's not because I was any smarter than anybody else. It's just because I'd seen it already.
Mhm.
I'd seen all these failure modes. So, I saw more than a month than most, engineers at a plant see in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, great experience for what you were doing and what you were getting prepared to do too. So yeah, interesting, fun.
So,
So you spent some time out in the field, and they put you
yeah,
into predictive maintenance.
yeah.
You had this,
I headed up the
yeah,
department. I had
nice.
a couple guys working for me, so that was really great. Then it was owned by an individual that I loved to death, but sometimes it could be a little difficult.
Hmm.
And we just really butted heads one day because I had a guy that was really suffering from an issue. He ended up having Lou Gehrig's disease, and
Oh,
we actually moved my office from upstairs to downstairs because he couldn't do the stairs anymore. And I'd gotten mad at a client that was being a bonehead, and I Z'd out all of his data in my vibration analyzer. And I said, not only are you not going to get a report on this today before I leave, you're not getting a report, period. because he kept pushing me. I want to report before you leave. I want it now, now, now. It's like, I can look at it on this data collector, or I can go back and put it on the computer and look at it and give you a real report. And he just really rubbed me wrong that day. And I wiped out the data and left. And I called the owner and told him what I did, and came back. And he's like, well, I'm going to send your counterpart out, tomorrow to collect the data again. I said, no, you're not. I said, one, he's struggling. Two, it's not safe for him. It's not safe for the plant. So long story short, I turned in my keys. I left. That was a Friday afternoon. Monday morning, he called me and said, where are you at? And I said, do you not remember the conversation we had Friday? I quit. He's like, I thought you were joking. I was like, I don't joke. So he's like,
it happens, right? It happens.
Yeah. But I built a really good reputation for myself around that, area and that industry. And I called his direct competitor and said, hey, I'm looking for a job. And 5 minutes later, he hired me.
Yeah. Well, some of these in the moment things that people don't really think through, I mean, can have long lasting ramifications, like losing their lead, leader in the department. I mean, it's always worthwhile. I think that's a leadership lesson, to sit back and take a breath and listen to your folks, right? And say, hey, there's something going on here. Maybe I listen to this guy with all this Army experience and all this other experience. Probably has something, a nugget of wisdom in there somewhere, for sure.
It was really a blessing, because my career really took off from there.
Okay.
I ended up getting a call out of the blue from Fluor. Wanted to know if I would be interested in being a reliability engineer for them on a project. So I went and did a big restoration project at a steel mill, worked through a lot of issues that they were having. They almost lost their biggest client because of a defect in the steel rolls. And I led up a root cause failure analysis. And we found what was causing the defect, was able to fix it. So
a metallurgical or process issue.
So it was really where when they hardened the rolls in the mill, they basically had stress fractures in the rolls. And as the rolls wore and they started milling the rolls down, they were getting deeper and deeper into these fractures. What was happening is the fractures were catching the steel and making a lip in the steel. And when it would go off to the car manufacturer, because that little lip was in there, paint would not adhere to it. And, Toyota doesn't like it when paint falls off their cars. So,
very special process of painting those cars too, from what I understand or have seen in the past. I don't know if it's the same as it is today, but okay. Well, that's interesting. So got you more and more responsibility, probably a larger department, big projects, that type of
project, stuff. And then I got a call, and guy wanted to know if I was interested in being a reliability engineer for DSM Engineering Plastics. It's like, sure. Went, got the job, and it wasn't for long that my boss left, and his role, job title, was Manager Improved Plant. It's a Dutch company, Dutch titles. So basically there's two managers of the plant. There's Manager Improved Plant, which is all your environmental safety, maintenance, engineering, and then there's Operate Plant Normal, which is your operations manager, and together we manage the plant. So
okay, so like co-managers the facility, and that was injection molding or pelletizing, or
it was pelletizing.
Okay, gotcha. And gathering more and more experience along the way with different types of equipment. So now your stack of equipment familiarity is really getting large.
I'm getting deep into that, and getting into twin screw extruders, which actually helped me out in another job I got down the road. So everything I've ever done has actually prepared me for the next role. And I couldn't have planned it out any better if I had sat down and planned what my career was going to be. Literally, there's not something that I needed to know that I didn't get from the last job or role that I was in.
Interesting. And just by sort of going with the flow and working hard and,
Yeah.
showing up every day, man.
Yeah. And then my wife wanted to move to Florida to be closer to her parents, our grandparents. I said, yeah, if I got a job offer, I get an opportunity, I'll go to Florida. Got a call from General Mills. We're increasing our reliability staff, and I want to know if you'd be interested in a job. And it's like, where at? It's like, where do you want to be? I said, well, as close to Florida as I get. They said, how about Georgia? I said, sounds good. So,
Haven't been in food manufacturing yet. Why not?
That was one of the best job interviews I ever had. So I had a phone interview. They liked what I had, and they said, can you come down to the plant? So I went to the plant. They set me in front of a couple engineers. They talked to me, asked me questions. And I was like, we're going to take you down to the maintenance shop. The maintenance guys had an interview for me. So the rotating guys had a gearbox, and I said, tell me what's wrong with this gearbox. So I looked at the gearbox and rolled it around, and didn't take me very long. It's like, it's got a bad bearing. It's like, yeah. Well, then they asked me, well, how would you fix it? And I talked about, getting the manual, looking, what the parts were and everything. And I was like, all right. So then they took me over to the electrical guys, and they've got a motor there. Tell me what's wrong with it. It's like, you're right in my wheelhouse now, buddy.
Yeah.
I came from a motor shop. I said, I need a megger and a milliohm meter. For long, it's like, well, one, it's grounded. So,
Buddy, that was their big test, right? They didn't know who they were talking to. So this is a good transition. Excuse me, Mike, to go into. I mean, you've just talked about your experiences. What sort of tips would you give veterans transitioning out of the military on their search? Sounds like you hit a military recruiter or job fair or something like that. I mean, it's been a while, right? It's been a while for me too. But like, what were the basic things that you would say to anybody getting out to?
Well, I've been on both sides of the table.
Okay.
Because I also went to military fairs as a potential employer and interviewed a lot of military guys.
Awesome. Fantastic.
And what you find is a lot of them really have never really sat through interviews. So they're kind of rigid sometimes. They almost think it's a soldier of the month board or a promotion board, and they think they got to give the perfect answer, and they're afraid to give the wrong answer. And it's really, relax, take a breath. Let's just have a conversation. I find I can know more about an individual in a 5-10 minute conversation with them than I will in 30 minutes of asking them a bunch of stupid questions. So,
right. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. So the big thing is, don't be afraid to kind of relax, take a breath, tell them what you're interested in, what your passion is, why you think that job would, interest, you. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. On the potential employer side, you got to realize that these guys may be a little nervous. They're not probably polished in interviewing. And, it may be like me, it's the first time I was going to be without a job and I was nervous, so some of them were a little nervous, they want to know, will I know today? Will I know tomorrow? How quick can I start? And sometimes the process isn't that fast. So, just take the time, get to know them. I never really cared about what their military specialty is. What did you do while you were in service? Tell me exactly what you did.
Yeah, and being able to translate those experiences into, because everybody gets leadership. I mean, even if you're in for 4 years, unless you just can't do anything, right? You're going to either be leading a team of 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 by the time you've transitioned.
Even E3s have leadership time,
Right on.
At the post protocol office, I was an E3 at one point. I was a senior driver in the protocol pool, and I was in charge of all the other drivers. They were E3s, E2s, and E1s. So, but everybody has leadership time.
Yeah, and that's what I feel, and maybe you've seen it as well in your time in the civilian world, is that the opportunity for leadership in the civilian world is a lot different, right? Like it's there in the military, and not only is it there, but it's surrounded by the biggest organization, one of the biggest organizations in the world that's focused on leadership. You get out to the civilian world and you have these highly coveted, whether it's sales management, engineering management, whatever, highly coveted like next steps in the ladder. And one of the limiters is, well, you don't have any leadership experience. We're afraid that you're not going to be able to lead. Well, you got the military experience, you know how to lead. Well, it's 2, 3, 5, 10, 40. And yeah, so that's something I think it's wise for you to highlight that. Yeah, that's good advice.
They need to, point that out, because a lot of people just think, well, I really didn't do anything. I only turned a wrench, or I only drove a truck. It's not just that's all you did. You led people in stress, situations. You had to deal with a diverse group of people. You had to deal with different personalities. You had to be able to communicate effectively. So, it's a very valuable experience. So they shouldn't, undersell themselves. They need to be able to put themselves out there. And one thing I found is you've got to be able to take a risk and put yourself out there. I could have easily stayed at that motor shop for 20, 30 years and done the same thing for 20, 30 years. But, maybe the special forces in me or whatever, I want to do more. I want to do better. I want to be the best at what I do. So I kept pushing and pushing, to step out there and step outside the comfort zone. That's what's really important. Don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone.
I love it. I mean, the bias to action, the always looking for the next qualification sort of thing. And that's, rings true in the Navy too. Never stop leading and never stop learning.
Yeah.
Right. And don't be satisfied with sitting around and the status quo. That's awesome.
I've got a stack full of certifications and stuff, and that's great. But it's my quest for knowledge and quest to be better at what I do. I spent a lot of nights, reading books and studying on my own that nobody said, hey, go study this. I just knew that I need to be a little bit smarter in this. I need to know a little bit more about that. So it's that drive to excel. And it's worked well for me. I made it all the way up to senior manager in the 4th largest consulting company in the world. So that says something about, from a guy that grew up on a farm in Mississippi.
Right on. And spent 45 days in the desert.
Yeah.
Came back and desperately needed a shower.
I didn't. It took me till I was 30 years old to figure out why I couldn't spell. It's because I didn't pronounce anything right.
You wrote like you talked, and it didn't come out with spell check.
It wasn't right.
That's funny. Well, that's fantastic, and I think very, very valuable wisdom from your career and your experience. And people can have all the IQ smarts in the world, or they can be born with some sort of privilege or whatever. It will never beat hard work and diligence and just continuing to learn and grow, because I'll tell you, you're an example, a shining example of nonstop living your best life and continuing to grow and pick it up. Because there's only one trip, you only get one ticket for this thing, right? Live your best life, learn as much, help as many people as you can, and before you move on to the next adventure. And you're helping us here, Mike, too. So thank you for that. Anything we missed or unique things that you really wanted to bring out here before we sort of wind it down?
I kind of mentioned, being able to step out of your comfort zone and, take the initiative. If you're interested in something, take some classes in it, get online, do some research on it, be able to speak intelligently, in your interview about the topic. I've done some interviews with potential employees that I knew 2 minutes into it that I was wasting my time. They put no effort into it, so put some effort into it. And on the
It shows, right?
Yeah, it really shows. I do want to relate one little story about how the military can kind of jump up there and help you out a little bit.
Right on. Let's hear it.
So when I left Accenture, I was looking for something a little more laid back, and a buddy of mine who had worked for Allied said, "Hey, Allied's looking for an electrical guy for a project. Would you be interested?" I said, "Sure." And he calls up, the VP and tells him about me, and he mentions that I'd been in Special Forces, and the guy says, "Really? I'm having dinner right now with a Special Forces guy." He said, "What's that guy's name?" He told him, and the guy looks across the table and it's like, "Hey, you know this guy Mike Perkins?" He said, "Yeah, I was his cadre in Special Forces training course. He's one of the best guys I had come through the course." I was hired.
Nice. I love it. I mean, vets helping vets, and it's really a small community. It is a really small community. I know at least one other Army Special Forces guy that has also been on this podcast, Ken Hurst, and I don't know if you and Ken ever cross paths, but he's a great guy as well. So this is fantastic. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate what you've done for our country and what you've done for us here on this mission, what you're doing for the maintenance and reliability community as well. So I think that is going to wrap us up. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and help us on this mission. If people want to get a hold of you, I mentioned your LinkedIn profile. Is that your primary access to social media? Anything else?
That's my only access to social media.
Okay, well, smart. Yeah,
I keep a very small social media footprint because that's it.
Yeah, and that's really all you need, right? It's really all you need, and I'm sure if people contact Mobius and if they can't find your LinkedIn profile or whatever, then they can get a hold of you. But you willing to help somebody out if they have a question or something like that?
Yeah. In fact, shortly I've got a call with a young guy that I hired not too long ago, working with him to get spun up to speed on a project and working on his skill sets.
Nice. Well, I haven't met a veteran who's not willing to help another veteran in their quest to live their best lives and make transition journeys and get better every day. So thank you for that. Before we close, I'd like to remind our listeners to give us a 5-star rating. If you enjoy what we've got going on here, it will really help us out. And finally, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Mobius, for providing this platform to help both transitioning vets as well as those looking to hire them in the field of maintenance and reliability. Vivino out.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Veterans Connected. We will see you back for another episode very soon. In between, we hope to see you in the Veterans Connected community group where you can meet Eric and fellow podcast guests and share with other industry veterans at mobiusconnect.com. And we hope to see you there.